Lucius. Das war bestimmt keine Person, die besonders sympathisch war.
Bellatrix Andromeda und Narcissa sind, glaube ich, nach Sternen da gebildet worden.
Auch so wie so ein Kuhschwanz, die, glaube ich, hier die langsam und gemütlich sie kaut. Und die andere kratzt sich da ihren Nacken.
Das muss ja von unten sein, oder wenn das ist.
Ja, die scheinen aber auch nicht so hektisch zu sein mit Fressen und Kauen. Aber sie macht die Lippen nicht so weit. Aber gierig ist sie nicht. Das wird schwierig, sie hinterher zu locken, wenn sie keinen richtigen Hunger hat.
Wo ist die Türen sind, ne?
Denkst du, dass sie sich den Kopf stoßen?
Kleinkind würden die jetzt
Guck mal, jetzt macht es doch weniger.
like how the other stuff fit.
You got food? Anybody got food?
Sie haben doch so gemacht, dass man die nicht
Everybody got food? What? You got food?
Wenn alles fertig ist, dann haben wir jeden Morgen
Okay, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to the giraffe enclosure here at ZSL London Zoo. My name is Issy. I'm one of the presenters here at the zoo. We're also joined by our keeper for the day team, who are going to be feeding our giraffes today, and hopefully we can entice them to come over and have a little bit of an afternoon snack. So, as we are in the Into Africa exhibit part of the zoo, it doesn't take a huge amount of imagination to know that giraffes do come from Africa, specifically sub-Saharan Africa. I'll just introduce you to the tower of giraffes that we've got here. The collective name for a group of giraffes is called a tower. So the one that we've got here very close to the bridge is Molly. She's kind of the middle child of the group. She's 13 years old. Towards the back there, looking very, very elegant. On the left, that is the oldest, tallest giraffe here. That's Elise. She is 15 years old. She's also by default the most dominant giraffe of the group. So she's the matriarch. She is the leader of this tower. And then rounding out the bottom, we have little Maggie, who's just there. She's the youngest of the giraffe. She's 11. And she also has the little fluffy ossicones at the top, easily distinguishable, those little horn things. I will explain what those are a little bit later. But for now, as we've got Molly here just having a bit of a browse of some lettuce, I'm basically going to take you on a top-to-tail tour of a giraffe's body, because a giraffe is quite an iconic, quite uniquely designed animal. It's actually been said by psychologists that the giraffe is the third animal that children learn to recognize after a dog and a cat, which is quite fascinating if you think about it, because most children will never have seen a real giraffe, but as soon as they see it in a storybook or on television or in a film, it becomes instantly recognizable because of its shape and the way it's designed. So I'm going to start, as we've got Molly here, just with the top of the giraffe. I'm going to begin basically pretty much at the front of her face and talk about her mouth. Now you can see, as she's munching on those leaves, she's sticking out a very bluish black tongue. That tongue is extremely important. It's 50 centimeters long. It's long enough to actually lick their own eyeballs, would you believe it? Because out on the savannah, they get a lot of dust and debris blown into their eyes. So having a 50 centimeter long tongue is quite handy if you need to lick your eyeballs. In addition to that, you've also got her beautiful eyelashes, the envy of many a lady here at the zoo. Now those eyelashes are also very functional. They also help to catch dirt and also basically keep any dirt or grit out of her eyes. And you'll see that there's a dark ring around each of her eyes as well, which basically acts as an inbuilt kind of sunshade. So it's quite handy as well when you've got the sun beating down on your face for quite a long time of your day. Now also moving on, the top of the giraffe's head, you can see what look like horns. Now these are not horns, these are actually called ossicones, the fancy scientific word for these, and they're actually part of the giraffe's skull. Now the skull there, you can see, they start out as cartilage, which is a little bit of like the front of our noses or our ears, and as the giraffe gets older, they harden and they eventually become part of the giraffe's skull. Now the females don't really use them for much, but male giraffes actually use them to fight. And in breeding season, male giraffes do something that is called necking, where they will swing their necks towards each other, trying to knock the other down, and it does do quite a bit of damage, because the giraffe has a lot of power in its head. So it's usually the males that will use these for fighting when they're having a scrap over the females during breeding season, but the females don't really use them for much. It was actually thought for a really long time that giraffes didn't have a voice, but it's actually been discovered that giraffes can make sounds that are much too low for the human ear to hear. They make very low frequency sounds, and it's thought that the ossicones at the top might be assisting with this in terms of kind of acting as a bit of an antenna, a bit of a transmitter in the way they receive and emit sounds. So moving on, you've got down to the giraffe, you've got the most iconic feature of a giraffe, which is the neck. I cannot talk about giraffes without mentioning that beautiful long neck. And it's really handy for a giraffe to have a neck this long, because it means they can reach the tops of the trees and get the juiciest of leaves. Giraffes actually get a lot of moisture from the food that they eat, so if you're tall enough to reach the tops of the trees, it means you can get the juiciest of leaves, and it also saves you energy when you don't have to traipse around the savannah looking for sources of water. Now, just giving the size of a neck, if you think about the number of bones we have in our neck, humans have 7 bones in our necks. They're really, really tiny like this. A giraffe has exactly the same number, 7. They're just absolutely massive. So that's something you have in common with a giraffe. Same number of bones in your neck. Now moving on down from the neck, you've got the giraffe's body and that beautiful iconic brown spotty pattern. Now that spotted pattern is quite important because it serves as camouflage for the giraffe. Now I realize this doesn't look like it works because we can see Molly quite clearly as she wanders away very casually, still chewing on that lettuce. So she's quite easy to spot, but as soon as she walks behind big clumps of leaves, a giraffe is it's a lot more difficult to see a giraffe because that pattern breaks up their outline and it makes them a lot more difficult to spot. And when giraffes are moving together in a herd, something happens in terms of the camouflage. They basically, once they're moving together as a herd, they basically become a big blur, and it becomes a lot more difficult for predators like lions to single out one giraffe. Lions will typically go after giraffes that are sick, injured, or elderly. So when they're moving together as a herd, they become a big spotty blob, and it becomes a lot harder to single one out. Now, just moving on down from the giraffe's body, you can see what look like quite rangy looking rubbish legs. Now, the legs, believe it or not, actually have a lot of power because giraffes do a lot of things standing up. So they eat, sleep, and even give birth standing up, would you believe? So those legs are strong enough to support a giraffe for pretty much its whole life. And when a giraffe is born, it basically drops to the ground. It has a 6-foot drop to the ground with a splat. And the mother, rather than giving it a nice kiss and kind of nudging it to get up, she will start to gently kick the baby. And the reason she does this is basically to encourage the giraffe to use her legs as quickly as possible, because there are lots of predators like lions and hyenas around that would love to take advantage of a newly born giraffe. And the legs really kick in from a very young age. Within 20 minutes, a newborn giraffe can be up, walking, and running with the rest of the herd. So those legs are pretty powerful. They kick in from a very, very young age. And also, they're pretty lethal weapons because one kick from a giraffe can actually kill a lion, would you believe it? Because it's quite a dangerous endeavor for a lion or even a pride of lions to try and take on a giraffe. Lions will almost never attack a healthy adult giraffe, but simply because of that lethal kick. So they can use those quite easily as offensive weapons. You've also got their hooves, which are around the same width as a dinner plate, so they're actually very, very functional. The last bit on the giraffe's body I want to quickly mention is their tail. Now, that's basically a bit inbuilt fly swat, quite handy for swatting away pesky insects. And also, a bit of a pub quiz fact for you. The black hair on the end of the giraffe's tail is the single longest strand of hair in the animal kingdom. So if you ever ask that in a pub quiz, you want to win some money, that hair belongs to the giraffe. Now, just looking at the way giraffes are designed and all the features that I've mentioned, you could be forgiven for thinking that there is no other animal in the world like it. But there are in fact 2 members of the giraffe family. One is the giraffe, obviously. The second one is an animal called an okapi. And if you want to see what one looks like, if you head down that way, into Africa and you look on the right, we have an okapi enclosure. It's not a hybrid, it's not a mutant, it's not an experiment that we tried on. It looks very, very different from the giraffe, but that is the forest-dwelling East African cousin of the giraffe. And if you look at their heads, you'll notice they look pretty much identical to a giraffe, except in okapis, the males have the ossicones and the females do not. Now, lastly as well, when you think of endangered animals, giraffes are not usually the first animals that spring to mind, but believe it or not, there's actually fewer giraffes in Africa than there are elephants. Giraffes are actually extinct from 7 different countries in Africa, and they're vulnerable for a number of reasons. So they're hunted for their meat, they're also hunted for sport, and of course habitat destruction is affecting them as well. So here at ZSL, we are a conservation charity. We do have a project out in Kenya, working with the Kenyan Wildlife Service to improve law enforcement and also to monitor the population of giraffes. The spotty pattern is really, really important because each giraffe has a unique pattern, so it means that we can count them easily and see which individuals have each pattern. So we are doing a bit of conservation work there, and the money that you pay to get into the zoo is directly funding some of this conservation work. So a big thank you to you guys for coming to see our giraffes here. That pretty much brings me towards the end of the talk. Hopefully they might come over and have a bit more of some letters if there's any left. If you have any questions, I'll be hanging around for a few minutes. If not, enjoy the rest of your day here at ZSL London Zoo. Thank you.